You got tea all over the world's smallest man.
So go on. 3, 2, 1.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Trout Spinners with Miles Pennell and Gary Forrestal. How you doing, mate? You alright?
Yeah,
On
not
this
too bad.
glum day?
Yeah, not too, it's very glum, very glum. And the weather, I was just saying to you off air, it's finally turned to big coat time. Like I wore my big coat, and it sounds like a Michael McIntyre routine. Oh, you wear the big coat. But yeah, it was pretty chilly.
Yeah, someone laughed at me because I was wearing a coat in a pub because I just looked so out of place. And it was just like a sort of mild evening a couple of weeks back. And I was like, yeah, but you can joke. But how is it?
Miles wears. I met with Miles in London on probably
Oh,
one of the hottest days of the year. Like it's about 3 or 4 years ago, and he was wearing a full moleskin. He doesn't like me using that phrase, but
I
he's
didn't even know what moleskin was.
moleskin jacket, thick, and I just couldn't believe it. I was in shorts, t-shirt. That was it. He was in jeans, like an Undertaker. He looked like.
Yeah, I've got quite weak skin when it comes to the cold weather. Sort of penetrates me quite hard. I get quite.
Does
Did
it?
you get cold? Yeah.
Well, okay, sorry. No, I'm actually
We're
leaving.
going to go there because we
I'm
don't.
not even going to go there. I'm not even going to go. But
Who else has seen this filth?
but yeah, it's yeah, up and down. Is things are all right in general, and it's a big day. I know you said you were going to mention it yourself,
Yeah.
but like it is because I remember this day. I wasn't particularly at the time particularly into them. But certainly looking back, it's the album that's most kind of special to me. And the What's the Story Morning Glory's release. And I just want to say something. People think, oh, if you say you're a fan of Oasis, you're just trying to be in with the crowd because everyone likes Oasis. So it's not cool to say you like Oasis. But I don't care. I like Oasis. But even amongst Oasis fans, it's not that cool to say that What's the Story Morning Glory is your favourite album, because it's the commercial album, it's the album that did best. So most people like to say, oh, no, it's any one of the others, that didn't do so well, which makes them seem like more of a music connoisseur. But I unashamedly say this is probably my favourite album of all time, and yeah, we certainly play it to death, don't we? So when we meet, I didn't even say actually it's 20. The anniversary it's 25 years old today. Definitely, maybe is a better album, I think, overall. But What's the Story Morning Glory means more to me. And then after Be Here Now, but What's the Story Morning Glory is the biggest selling album Oasis ever did by a long way.
Well, I was going to ask you, Gary, on your fandom of that album and Oasis generally. Don't relax. It's okay.
I am relaxed. I'm relaxed.
Can you tell me the whole track listing from What's the Story Morning Glory from start to finish?
Yes, I could quite easily.
Do you want to do it for the lovely ladies and gentlemen who are listening?
Okay, so here we go. Hello. By the way, Hello is probably one of their most underrated songs. I think they can't add it to anything, like any compilation or any best of, because Gary Glitter wrote part of it, not with them, but they sample Gary Glitter. Yeah, they sample a Gary Glitter song.
What for? Nobody ever mentioned the wind.
Yeah, it's not that. It's just in the chorus. Anyway, Hello, Roll With It.
Yeah.
Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger, Hey Now, the Swamp Song Part 1. Some might say Cast No Shadow.
Yeah.
Great song. Do you remember I played that?
Yeah.
She's Electric.
Yeah.
Morning Glory.
Yeah.
Swamp Song Part 2.
Yeah.
The Redux, and of course Champagne Supernova.
Oh my God, I can't believe you got that.
But it's my favourite. Most people get that, like the full track.
I probably do that with some Block Party albums actually. Maybe when they celebrate their 5th anniversary or whatever.
Oh, yeah, 25th. Yeah. I don't.
No, actually, most of those indie bands that I like, though, they've been, going for about 15 years. So that's how time flies. And how twice, considering that these XFM shows that we're about to review, they came out in 2002, didn't they?
Good, Miles. Professional link back to the main subject area of the show. So some people say, oh, they don't like the bit at the beginning where we kind of talk randomly. Some people say they do like that bit. So I never know how far we should go. But let's anyway, as you mentioned it, we'll get to the main topic. Well, the main topic is the Ricky Gervais Show, XFM, and we're just kind of going through each show in order and just giving our thoughts and review and things like that of it. This week, I believe, is episode 32.
It's 33.
33. Okay, and what can you tell us a little bit about it, Miles?
Of course I can, Gaz. Of course I can.
What?
Don't say
What?
Gaz.
Gaz? That's the first time you've ever called me Gaz.
I went to say it, then I said it. This week we discuss episode 33, 5th of April 2003. Steve runs to the local McDonald's to fetch 5 hamburgers for Karl to stuff in his mouth in an attempt to break a world record. I'll put a link to the original show in the description, so please do listen to that via Man Moth and then return to us for our little debrief.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi again. Yeah. We didn't even take a break there. We just said hi straight away. We pretended.
Like professionals. What are your initial thoughts on this episode? Because it's quite, just to people regard this as like one of the best episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why it's kind of seen as that. The world record breaking attempts are quite unique. There isn't anything like that on any other show. Like they do bits where Karl touches Steve's foot, I think, or takes his sock off. You know, they do stuff like that, which is similar. But this is like, I think that it's a unique show for that reason. I personally like the show, but I do feel that there are moments that leave me not feeling entirely comfortable with the amount of antagonism that Karl is getting, and the way it's, again, because we talked about this before, it's not, he could call Karl a dozy twat or whatever 10 times a show and it will be fine, you know, but it's when his tone changes, and here his tone changes a little bit a couple of times. And we'll go into it in more detail as we discuss the episode, but I don't like it. I don't like it when he's like that. Having said that, it's a great episode. You know, you get something in this episode you don't usually get. You know, he's genuine trying to stuff burgers.
Man eating burgers on the radio.
Not even eating. He's not even allowed to eat them. It's a good show though. I wouldn't have it for the reasons I just said. I wouldn't have it up there with some of my favourites. I will just say there's one bit that I always skip through. I always, like, on my iPod, I always just, you know, press it to about sort of 2 or 3 minutes.
Right, Grandad, iPod. Is it classic as well?
Isn't that like what everyone uses?
I don't know. Do people use iPods anymore? Email in. spinnerspodcast@gmail.com.
Do you ski? Yes or no? I always skip. I find this so awkward. The bit at the beginning, close to the beginning, where they're having a go at Karl, which is fine, and I don't skip it because it's offensive or not funny or anything like that. It's just cringe. Like, you know, when the hairs, you know, when you get a tingling going up your spine. Like, you get a tingling, and it can be a good thing or a negative thing. And this is what I get when I listen to this. And when I listen back to this show, I heard it all through again, and it was just so cringe, where Steve says, you know, you said be there at 6, and Rick is like, no, you told Steve be there at 6, and Karl's going, no, I didn't. And Steve, I said I'll be around 6, and then Steve reads out a text, and it says, see you around 6 ?
So
and
you just said it around.
So cringe. And then Ricky's like, has to say, like, he's really ganging up on Karl, but then he has to say, no, actually, he did say it, Steve. Like, I don't know why. I just find
why do you find that cringy?
Like, I don't find it offensive in any way. I don't find they treat Karl too badly. It's a bit annoying for Karl. I think it's a bit out of order, but fine. I don't skip it because I think it's not funny. It's just so cringe. Like, that Steve is just, I think Steve is embarrassed a lot on air. I'm not saying Steve feels embarrassment from that moment, but it's very embarrassing for Steve because he's got Ricky behind it. Yeah, he said 6. And then he reads out the text, and it's exactly what Karl said he said, basically, and it backs up Karl's side of the story. Anyway, we won't we're not gonna spend. Don't worry, we're not gonna spend the next 58
We're not
minutes.
social psychologists.
But no, but I just find that moment cringe. I just wonder if anyone else did. Clearly not you, but
I like that bit. I wouldn't skip that bit. But my
I
feelings towards this whole episode have changed dramatically because I used to always skip the Guinness World Records bit because it is like Ricky said, it's just too noisy and chaotic and people eating burgers and stuff.
He does that next week.
I don't like hearing people eat on air and stuff like that. No one does, I'm sure.
By the way, Mars, sorry, I forgot. I've bought some grapes. Do you know how much of grapes I bought? Do you know how much it cost me when he weighed them? £4 and 5p.
Right.
I've got so many. I just picked a bunch. So anyway, we can do something on that. Sorry, I forgot to tell you.
About money and the world records, I can link these two together because I'm professional like that.
You tell Miles once, you give him some compliment that he did something well. Like he will take that and internalize it and disseminate as much as he can, as many times as he can. You did it well once. Anyway, go on.
Cheers, and I'll do it well again. 89p per hamburger. He bought 5 hamburgers, Steve Merchant, and it came to £3.45. I did the same calculation today using the 2020 McDonald's menu. £4.45 for the equivalent. So it's inflation.
That's tiny inflation, though. We're talking 20 years.
Yeah.
Ricky says double it every 10 years, which isn't correct, but it should be. I would have thought that you would double something probably in 20 years. Are you sure?
Yeah, mate, I did the calculations. I didn't even order anything, unlike you.
I've had 2 McDonald's this last week. So.
I can't believe you. I'm just so surprised that you even eat McDonald's. I just can't. In your lonely flat, on your rocking chair, listening to your Oasis in the dark, eating a McDonald's hamburger.
And I wish to be, this town holds no more for me. Sitting in my rocking chair. Actually, that's the one thing I want.
Put like a chip into a fish bowl.
No, if I have, I don't have a fish, as you know. My fish died.
No, sorry, I know it's a sore
spot. He named
spot.
the sitcom after him. Yeah, I don't really sit in McDonald's in my lonely flat eating McDonald's all the time, but I have had McDonald's far more often. Like I got one about 3 or 4 months ago, and it was the first I'd had for about 3 years, and since then I've had about 12. So I always order the same as well. I love it.
Anyway,
yeah, I might get one now instead of.
But because Steve goes out to McDonald's about halfway through once they've got the book that cost him $18.99 in Borders, and the McDonald's that they go to, the one in Leicester Square, it's almost become a bit of a pilgrimage for people. The amount of like Reddit threads and stuff that I've read, or people who I've spoken to, and they say, if I went to London, I'd go to the McDonald's in Leicester Square. Out of what you choose that over.
Imagine
if go to bed or something.
Imagine if Tyre still works there. Hopefully she's been promoted. Because I was thinking she could be a guest. She's so sweet. The way she just sort of says, good luck, it's just very sweet. Yeah, absolutely. I've been to that McDonald's in Leicester Square and thought the same thing. It's funny how because I've also been to the one on Oxford Street, which they talk about. I think that's the one Ricky's referring to when he says, he stood up, he got free chips. But
Stuart Evans, interestingly, online, he said on our Twitter at Spinners Podcast, he said this was the one and only time we heard Merch actually spending money, and it was live. Literally forgot they were on air.
They got Karl, because they have that discussion before it, which I find so funny. Bear in mind, Rick is sitting there pretty much, even by that stage, a millionaire. And he's just orchestrating Steve and Karl to kind of discuss who's going to spend the money, and he's not even offering. So actually, I don't think Steve went there, but as far as they sort of conclude on the show before, we'll never know for sure, but Karl actually forked out the money to Steve, and he's going to get reimbursed by XFM. So it's
he mentions that at the end of the episode, because at the start he's moaning about them two. He's like, you annoy me in different ways, Steve. It's like, he lists all the reasons why he hates working.
That is a classic moment. That's probably one of the things that makes it a seminal show for those people that find it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Just like, how does he annoy it? And Ricky just jumps on it straight away. He's like, how does he annoy you? But get him gig tickets he doesn't go to. Get get him a free bag and he doesn't want it. He comes in late with songs that need editing. And
But
so,
you know what I mean? All those things are reasonable things to dislike. Like, I'm not saying if I met Steve, I'd like him overall, but
they were so entitled, they expect to turn up. And to be fair, presenters do just generally do what the producers do. They are the talent, if you will. So Karl is doing his job.
we'll get to an interesting point about that later, and XFM in the community, that's coming up later. You know, they are being real and to themselves, which is, you know, lends itself to having these arguments. I think that Ricky and Steve genuinely, all right, they're the presenters, but Karl is right on a lot of these arguments. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's funny a lot of the time that he's antagonised. I just find this show, it's too much, and it's a bit, it turns a little bit nasty. Whereas Songs of Phrase, right, might sound crap, but if you're going to do the phrase, my neighbour had a horse in a house, to get anything is pretty impressive. Do you know what I mean? Like, it sounds shit.
But it is by far the worst Songs
it
of
is,
Phrase.
but think of what other songs could you use for that? You can't. There aren't many. We're going to call, well, one of that we never did, but one of the potential names for this show was just In, because we love that so much.
I put in all the right places.
Remember we looked that song up. It is the worst pile of dog shit song. Yeah, it's
out of all the songs with in the title, you could even had Jump In Jack Flash. You could have,
you could have a lot,
you could have even had that, and it would have been better. So he's talking about how much the guys annoy him, and then he comes back to it at the end. It does have a lovely narrative, this one, because it kind of goes back, and no one comes out of the show very well. Actually, no one does.
I think Karl comes out well. I think Ricky and Steve come out a little badly
as an absolute bully, particularly by the end, where, like, I do understand what you see when you know we've talked about episodes that make you uncomfortable. I do also skip the last bit of this episode because it's when he loses it at Monkey News. I feel like he's performing a bit. I don't feel like that's genuine anger. I feel like
I've got
to keep up appearances, like, over, you know, that's how the relationship should play out on the show. I think he's being actually quite self-aware. Then goes, it's not a story. What are you talking about? Ricky, why are you getting so passionate about this? And
no, we'll get to that in X. Actually, in all seriousness, if you are interested in this discussion, in XFM in the community, we've got a couple of bits of feedback that lend itself to the discussion around that point, and I'm going to talk about that. So, yeah, I do agree with you, but I'm not going to say any more at this stage because I will say it later.
No, that's cool. That does make me feel uncomfortable. It just makes me laugh when he gets to the end, and this is again about money. A lot of this show's about money.
Yeah.
And he says, it's not worth going for the stress for 30 quid. And then Ricky goes, you lying
little...
I know that you get paid more than that. Not that much more, I'll tell you. I would be pissed off at this, actually. I had a similar encounter at work where someone was making me, because I'm working from home, as you know. Someone at work had told me I need to make an international call to America on my phone. And I'm like, sod that. And he's like, yeah, but you can claim on expenses. And I'm like, no way. I have to wait. You literally have to wait weeks for that stuff. Karl is right on that. You know, it's not this episode, but it's a different one. So I'm not going to do that because I don't want to have to rack up a fucking phone bill. Just I'm a bit tight like that. But I wouldn't. Don't say anything.
I just said he is. That's it. Yeah, I've said what I'm going to say.
And yeah, to go to Borders whilst you're having a pint to get a fucking 20 quid book. So I'm actually out of pocket when I get to the end of this week. And he's doing it all to earn a kitchen and to buy a kitchen as well.
That's a very funny thing, you know, when he said, Suzanne said, we want a new kitchen. That's a great line. And again, there are classic moments in this show, but I just do feel like they are out of order. And one thing at the end, the worst bit, I think, of the whole show is, and I don't think it's a bad show overall, by the way, but the worst part, I hate this kind of tone of when anyone does this. I've known people to do it to people in my life, and it's horrible. When Karl's speaking at the end, I can't remember exactly what he's saying, and Ricky goes, like, then he's not acting. That's what you do to a child. Like, you're not actually saying a word, but you're just saying, excuse me. You're not saying excuse me, but you're just, like, excuse me. You dare talk over me? And actually, at that point, I don't think he's acting. I feel like he's genuinely been annoyed. It just slight, you know, and that's the sort of Ricky we see more often now. We won't go too much into that. We talked about that in other episodes. Check them out. But it's so horrible, and it's only a little thing. Like, it's just, but that little bit is so disrespectful to someone to do. And don't get me wrong, when he antagonizes Karl, it's very funny usually, and I like it, even though Karl doesn't always deserve it. Yeah, Karl knows it's for the balance of the show, and he accepts it for that reason, so I can live with it. But those moments like that, they're not funny, and they're horrible, so you've got nothing. What have you got out of that moment that's good? It's just a bit of a nasty moment. But having said that, I'm not coming out of the show saying Ricky was being a terrible person or really out of order. I'm just saying it's more like his balance, which he generally gets right in series 2 and 1 and 3 even. He's tipped the balance a bit, and it's come off.
Which is another name of one of his shows that he wanted to do in the early days. Yeah, it's disgusting. I won't go into it.
But yeah, I think that what Karl's doing basically is bloody hard. And you can take the piss out of him, but you've got to be funny with it. The whole thing's coming off the back of them having a bit of a fallout in the pub, and him not getting there at 6, and that's another thing. Him not getting there at 6. And it's so insulting for Ricky to say, "You've got one job, we've got loads of jobs." Don't you understand? Actually, Ricky's got lots of jobs. That's true, but he's the boss of almost all of them, so he's in charge of his own time, so he can easily get somewhere at 6. Karl might have one job, and Karl's absolutely right. It's one job, but with lots of jobs in it. But it's an incredibly stressful, tiring job that involves lots and lots of things. So yeah, it might be difficult for you to get there at 6. God, if my mate got there at 20 past 6, but I knew he was doing a job like that, I'd just say I wouldn't make a thing of it. But I can imagine that night, not on the show, but that night when they were out, Ricky made that a point. Ricky wouldn't stop going on about that, I'm sure, that he got there late, and Steve backs up Ricky, and so it must be horrible for Karl. So that evening, the show kind of is a continuation of that, and that's why I don't really feel that warmly towards this show.
I would have loved to have been in that pub though. It's because like I was saying, cheeky freak. Think of that as a normal thing that you hear, and
that's fine.
I think at one point you were trying to be sick on my leg, and then
that's fine. That's all fine. That's funny. That's funny. But it is annoying when someone doesn't turn up. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying they should understand Karl's job, and like another episode that isn't this one, is another one previously. They say they were meeting someone, and Karl says, "I got stopped in the corridor. I don't care." Well, actually, you should kind of care, because Karl can't just do whatever. Ricky can just speak to whoever he wants, or just go on his way, or whatever, because he's the boss of everything he does, and he's earned that right. But Karl isn't. If Karl gets stopped by someone in the corridor about something really important that's on tomorrow's morning show or something, he has to stay there and talk about it. And so, but Ricky and Steve don't appreciate that. And in fact, not only do they not appreciate it, they make him feel even worse by saying, "We've got lots of jobs, you've only got one." It's, again, putting him down a bit.
Yeah. And one of the little interactions that I like in this show is when Ricky says you're allowed to play one track a year.
Yeah, that's a fun. What was it again?
I can't even remember. It was
yeah.
I could literally hear it in my head, but I can't for the life of me remember what it was. And he goes, new music, because actually we've got some great stuff coming up. Ricky slagging off his choice. Karl just says, if you're from the 70s, you might like it.
And that's a sign that they are genuinely being quite argumentative today, off air as well as on air, because they've obviously had that discussion off air, because there are lots of times when they are acting in their reactions to each other, not scripted acting, but just acting. But that isn't one of them. I think that's genuine.
Oh, absolutely.
Karl is taking a dig there because he's just so pissed off at the Ricky and Steve's general attitude, and I would be as well.
But it's so funny, isn't it? Because at the end, like I was saying, who comes off worse here? I think it's Steve, because he gets kicked off the pub quiz team. I tell you what. Oh, well, it's so funny when Karl goes, I tell you what, Rick. I tell you what, just because he's been annoying me and you annoy me. Yeah. Last week you're snagging me off about the pub quiz. Well, it doesn't matter because you're not part of it. I goes, whoa, Ricky loses it.
I know.
Do you know what? I can actually hear Ricky's laugh now after those answers, because I can identify what he's laughing at when. It's so funny when you memorised it as much as we have. But it's true that why are you having a go at why would you? Most of your vengeance should be against Ricky, not Steve. But Steve comes out worse because there's, hold on, you're too scared to take on Ricky. You know that I'm the easy target. You know that I'm a nice guy. And then he says, which is, this will be one of my favourite quotes, but the truth of the matter is, Ricky Gervais is keeping you on burgers and grapes, which is a fantastic.
Yeah, well, I would say that actually Steve deserves Karl to have those digs at him because of how Steve does treat Karl during this sort of general period actually of shows, this run of shows. Like if you were in series 1, Karl says the most horrible things to Steve and genuinely nasty things. Like it was a different dynamic, but by now it's kind of Steve does have digs at Karl. But Steve is right that Karl focuses on Steve rather than Ricky because he knows it's Ricky's show, you know, but Ricky's kind of earned that right because it's his show, you know. But Steve is right with that. Like Karl does disproportionately show his sort of anger at Steve. Steve is a much easier target than Ricky for a start. But also, you know, Steve does still deserve, you know, some digs from Karl, I think. I think that's right. I think some more digs at Steve is fine. You should just balance it out by having more digs at Ricky as well. It's the Ricky Gervais show, so what are you going to do if you're the producer?
This show does sort of wrap everything up, actually, because do you feel like there's a sense of everything's reset when we get to the next episode? Because I know this is like a trend with the shows. They go through long periods of time where, you know, the antagonist, it's like a rising, you know, graph, you know, the piss taken and the antagonism reaches such a stage where you have, it's like a ticking time bomb where it literally just explodes, and then they literally need like a week or 2 weeks to reset. And that's the same, you know, if you go on holiday with someone for too long, they get on your tits. If you you know,
especially Karl's
do you know what I mean? When he talks about parents,
not thought about it like that. I guess I mean, the antagonism, I need to kind of think about it more deeply, but you're probably right. Like the antagonism kind of, if it's on a graph, you know, it's one of those, it's going to sort of be a famous V shape, because people talk of a V-shaped recovery, which is bullshit. It won't happen from COVID, but it's kind of a V shape or a triangle shape. Like the antagonism goes up and up and up. Yeah, it does kind of reset. I think
that's the same with. I think friends and family go through those moments. Like
we our relationship's a bit like that, but actually there is not.
Not really. We don't really argue.
No, but I'm saying that when things do reach ahead, they reach ahead, and it's been building up for a few weeks.
But then but then you need to know, just to give it a break, then, don't you? If you can sense things are getting too stressful, you sort of. This is the thing, though. Karl knows that this is an obligation for him. He has to get that kitchen. That's all he's worried about for Suzanne.
Suzanne, you know, he's quite sweet, really.
I love it. But also, he didn't give a shit who Ricky Gervais was. He treated him like normal, you know. And I quite like that.
He's. I don't think
he does. At no point does he register his celebrity, only to take the piss out of it. Like when he talks about, didn't their helicopter come pick you up?
Helicopter, yeah.
Yeah, it's just he does not care who you are. Like he'll treat you the same. Like
I think he gets that from his dad, because I think his dad would be like that. Like even if he told his dad, I'm working with Ricky Gervais' dad.
Oh.
So no, he probably not heard of him. Like okay, and then what you have for tea. Just move on to something else. But,
do you know who killed? Do you know who killed Diana's son? Right, flower companies. Quite right, Dan.
When's that on? But it's. I do feel sorry for Karl in this episode. I think that they go too far. The level of abuse, it's clearly come from maybe previous episodes, but it's come certainly from their meeting in the pub that happened midweek. And getting off on the wrong foot with not getting there at bang on 6, which he didn't actually even say that he was going to get there bang on 6 when it's revealed. So I actually feel quite sorry for Karl. I do like the episode. It's got some stuff in it that is not in any other episode, where it's more of like an Idiot Abroad kind of thing. It's the kind of sort of thing it's giving Karl a big task to do. Like it's not something we sort of see in the rest of the XFM shows, except the odd time like where he removes Steve's sock, as I say, and things like that. But it's like, right, we're going to give you something to do. That's okay. Guinness Book of Records, try and beat this record. And I think that Karl does a bloody good job. He's going red. He's going red. He's eating, and he's actually when the grapes thing as well. Like Ricky again, he kind of, you can tell. I think I can tell. I'm not sure, but I think I can tell when he's acting and not acting in his reaction. And the grapes thing, he's like genuinely chastises Carl for eating only 62 grapes in a
No,
minute.
he's doing it all for comical effect. Because when
No,
he
no,
does,
no, no, no.
there's people starving.
Act for comic effect. It's just the very initial reaction. I absolutely judge it that yes, it's mainly for comic effect, but there is part of that I believe is a genuine reaction, like a genuinely nasty kind of like, you only hit 62. Don't know why I think that, but I just think it's in keeping with how Ricky is in the rest of the episodes.
Coming up, we've got favourite quotes, which is always good, and
We-
XFM in the community, where we read out your feedback from all of the correspondence we get via email and Twitter. So stay tuned for that.
And the D Trout Spinners Vault is coming back.
Yeah, so that's when we select two of our favourite songs and we cast them into our Spotify playlist. But like I said, we do have a bit of music for you guys. We like to provide a varied show here at the D Trout Spinners.
This is good. This is good.
This is good, and this is from a band. They're sort of like a tribute parody band, I guess, called Hugh Phase.
They're a parody band, yeah.
Yeah, completely. So basically, they're a bunch of, I don't know how many people are in the band, but it sounds like
just because parody band sounds a bit pejorative. Like, they are a parody band. They're incredibly talented as a band. Like, it's actually like Flight of the Conchords. It's really hard to do
hard
music
to be funny in songs.
parody.
And they're avid listeners that XFM shows, and they've done a whole bunch of songs. So we're going to play one of them now, but I'll just read out what they said to us. Thank you for reaching out and for your interest in sharing our music with your listeners. None of us were familiar with your podcast yet, having been away from the XFM.
Mate. no one is.
Good company. Having been away from the XFM tapes for a few years now, but a deep dive is definitely in order. Definitely. This is the best time after a few years. It's great to see that there are others out there whose illogical obsessions with those conversations lead them into hobbies that devour their free time in the interest of nothing else than honouring the XFM years for a dedicated few. It would be great to plug our Bandcamp site, which I'll put in the description, and encourage people to buy and download the album, but it is also available on most streamer services. They also said, well done for securing an interview with Dickie Hansen. Any chance you can track down the holy grail that is Paul the Party Animal Parker? He gets a lot of love, doesn't he, Paul the Party Animal Parker? I've never got it with him, to be honest.
Well, no, he's not. He just emails him once or twice, and I think he's in the
Podcast.
He's not in. It's the podcast anyway. So he seems more of. I mean, Dickie Anders is the legendary figure. To track down Paul the Party Animal Parker would be nigh on impossible. Anyway.
So this is.
I've heard this. It's very good.
This is Hugh Phase with Manchester.
Back in the Manchester days, cycling round and round the estate. 13th birthday and I'm buying a cake and some potatoes from Hugh Phase. Hop in the taxi with my dad again. He's gotta pick up Mrs. Potato Head. He put that spaz in a wheelie bin if he starts to get out of hand. Drive past the old horse in the lounge. Been saving up money from my paper round to buy a Christmas gift for my mum. A lady's no pink Victoria Plum. Sister's had another baby again. It looks just like all her other kids. My brother's moving in on the sergeant's missus, and everyone on this estate has big eyelids. Watching two tellies with Alvin tattoo stand. Mancunians are the strangest people in the land. Big head lads with webbed hands. And there's Peggy pushing round her pram. A magpie is my only friend in this town. It pops my vitals and decks my head till it's round. The hair that I've got looks like a Chinaman's. according to the barber on the railway bridge. My boss said, Pilkington, I'm gonna sack you, but these trainers I'm wearing are brand new. I'm stuck in a lake behind cordon bleu, and there's nothing I can do. No, there's nothing I can do.
With Manchester, a lovely little band, and you can listen to them. I'll put a link in the description on Bandcamp, and they're also on Twitter and loads of streaming services. So I do highly recommend listening to the rest of the tracks, and we'll actually play one as we lead out of this week's episode. And we've just been discussing the week where they tried to break a world record attempt, eating 5 burgers and some great.
No, in 3 burgers in your face.
3 burgers, okay. Shall we do some of our favourite quotes?
Yeah, I've got a tight 5 this week, so let's try and make it 5.
I've got slightly few more than that, but I'll get through them quickly.
Okay, go on, you start.
Okay, as one emailer said, a dickhead.
A dickhead, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's not a funny quote. That's actually like a nice quote to read out because it's kind of true. It's good, in it, good value.
Good, that was one of mine. Huster toe coconut. It's the fastest coconut huster in the world. I love that. What is he trying to say there? Huster toe coconut.
Huster coconut, but he's Huster toka coconut. He says. We've already talked about this, and it's a classic. But people, do you know what I mean? Staring at me all the time if I'm walking around with Steve.
he says that at the right time, doesn't he? He got tea all over the world's smallest man.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Next week, Karl, you'll be eating Sony Walkmans.
That's a good one.
It does date the show, doesn't it?
That is definitely.
That was the latest technology then.
I don't know who this man is, and I've got no interest in football. But sorry, Paul Ince.
Yeah, it's a good. That was a good. Like Carl's analogy there is a good one because that is what happened to Paul Ince. It'll be asking, I don't know, someone who got run over to play Frogger.
Well, he does a great one just because you have to be bloody Jay Goody to get them in there. That does date it. That reference.
Date it, yeah.
Drink 8 pints. That's cool though, isn't it? About because he did actually have an alcohol problem, didn't he? John, what was his name?
John Thompson.
Yeah, because he did actually suffer from alcohol, didn't he?
Yeah, He's known. But they all did in that show because the main one as well. That's not libelous. Actually, that is quite libelous. Let's just say they like the odd drink, and we'll leave it at that. This is my last quote. Again, love it. Shite.
That's good.
No, he doesn't go shite. He goes shite. I love Ricky's very good at that because he plays the role that he should play. Like, so you would say, "Oh, I'm so frustrated. I nearly want to swear." So he goes. Yeah. But then he says the swear word anyway.
That's a classic Brent-ism, like something like that. And also when he goes, just let get into a swear word, but not saying the swear word.
No, but what's funny about Rick is that that's everything a presenter should do. Get to the swear word, don't say it. Shouldn't even reference it, but don't say it. But then Ricky not only does that reference to it, he then actually says the swear word.
The rest of the word, yeah.
So actually, I love him for it. And that's my last quote.
I've got just 2 more. Yeah, blockbusters are good, but you never see him eating grapes. And of course, I think both of our favourite quotes for this episode has got to be, and I'm surprised you didn't say it, was pathetic.
Pathetic. Well, I think pathetic. The reason I didn't is because there's quite a few instances where pathetic is said, I think, on the shows. And I didn't want to pick it, but you're absolutely right. Now I feel like I should have picked it because it is.
Well, something we say to each other all the time. It's just I don't know why Lisa Stansfield's so funny, but it's
like he's already pissed off Ricky, but he's going through these bands. Ricky's like yeah, and then he goes Lisa Stansfield in because he's already struggling to get Ricky's kind of attention and to get Ricky's buy-in with the whole thing. Ricky disagrees with. Just when he gets to that, Lisa Stansfield, and it's just the pause. and it is like pathetic. And it is
Oh.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know why I didn't pick it, because it is the best example of pathetic on the XFM shows. But it just was one I don't know.
There's Steve's laugh as well. It's so lovely after that. And he's got this lovely sort of high laugh, you know. I know some. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. As we move into XFM and the community, which is our next sort of mainstay of the Trout Spinners with Miles and Gary, I just want to give a special shout out to a listener on YouTube called Jesse Arujo. I'm going to definitely say that wrong. Definitely got that wrong.
It's all right. Go on.
It's okay. I'm sorry, Matt, if I got that wrong. Really do apologise. And he's been listening on YouTube, which we do actually have a Trout Spinners YouTube page. But basically, Jesse has been messaging week on week. He's literally binge listened the whole of the Trout archive, and he's put all of his favourite quotes in the comments section of each of them. So just a special shout out, Jesse. And he's actually just caught up with the shows.
His favourite quotes of ours, or favourite quotes of the Ricky Gervais show, I assume.
No, yeah, the favourite quote. Yeah, not ours.
I was going to say.
And nothing we say is quotable in any way.
No. It's in fact it should stop certain phrases being used publicly.
What a load of shite.
Okay, so firstly, I asked on Twitter. I did a poll. What's
at Spinners Podcast?
At Spinners Podcast. What's the absolute best series of the XFM Ricky Gervais show? Comment your reasons below. These results are very interesting to me, and roughly.
What were the choices available?
Roughly in line with what I expected. There were 93 votes. Actually, Twitter, you can't add a fifth option. I would have put Series 0 in there, but it's basically Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, Series 4. You know the results of this anyway, so I won't ask you. But basically, Series 2 came out the convincing winner with 76%. Series 1, in a distant second, 13% of. Series 3, then 9% of respondents. And Series 4 got 2%. So I'm glad each one did get something, but I'll just read out some reasons here below. So Yusuf, for a start, this is one that doesn't agree with the main way of thinking. I prefer Series 1. Series 2 is a stone cold classic. I think you can see the genesis of the podcast in there. Ricky is desperate to cram as much Karl as he can into the shows, and I think it's to the detriment of the quality on occasion. Both incredible, don't get me wrong. Yeah, we've got some thoughts coming up on sort of Series 1 and 2. That might stem from your part of XFM in the community, but I tend to agree with you, Yusuf, although actually before we go through some other comments, what's your favourite? Let's do ours. What's your favourite if you had
Series
to pick?
2, definitely, if I had to, but I think Series 3 has like some great moments as well. But this is when the show feels at its best. It strikes the right balance with everything that I want from like the perfect XFM show. Which
I would pick Series 2 as well.
But it's interesting that a lot of people in that poll did say Series 1. Like,
not a lot, but we got there's about, let me just work this out, 93, so probably about 12 votes, 12 out of 90, which is not bad. Yeah, Yusuf prefers Series 1. I understand why people would prefer Series 1. Obviously, we've kind of decided to come up into this podcast in Series 2. I think Series 2 is like both early enough and late enough that, as you say, it's got a good mix. So it's early enough that they haven't changed radically, and they're not just almost, not quite, they don't ever do this, but they almost start scripting when once it gets to the podcast, they start scripting almost what's going to be said. They start planning. So it's early enough for that not to have happened, but it's also late enough for Karl to have become integrated into the show to a point where he is very entertaining.
Because Karl takes time to develop into the man that he sort of becomes. At the start, he didn't really want to say anything in those early episodes. He was always being prodded with a stick. He literally just wanted to sort of sit there in the background before becoming like, part of, the regular three, as it were, like being advertised as Ricky Gervais, Steve Match, Karl Pilkington. They did make him, if you want to give it a phrase, but
let me read some more.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry,
Can't they kind of address things like what you're saying? Yeah, anyway, Stuart Evans says Series 2, the Merchant Pilkington argument era. You can see how they grew to have enough of each other, bless them. But it was sheer joy the years we had, lads. Great, good, absolutely true. Travelling Blade, who is Katie, says Series 2 wins because of its sheer size and thus the amount of content it has. Jordan Kirby says Series 2 all day, start of Rockbusters, Monkey News, Songs of Phrase, best series by a mile. That is important because the features
are better.
Yeah, well, there are features. There aren't features as so much.
Well, there's things like Knob News and later.
Yeah, that's a bit later. I don't. Is there Knob News in Series 1?
No.
So there isn't a Karl feature really in Series 1. We've got Ronnie Ecker, definitely the second series. So many great things started there. Educating Ricky, Rockbusters, Monkey News, on a similar vein to the last quote. It was all evolving during that time before it became more of a routine later on. Still funny. I agree with him. It did become more
that's true.
But yeah, it is still funny. You listen to those podcasts, they're more entertaining than a lot of things you get in media today. They're just nowhere near as good as the series that we're on at the moment. This is my captain playing. Okay, I think Series 2 is the perfect sweet spot of Karl being a fresh part of the show and getting involved. By 3 and 4, they're all such big stars. The vibe is different. That's a good point that no one's made so far, is that, Karl became, by the series 3 and 4, Karl was quite well known, whereas at the beginning of this series, we enter with Karl not being known by anyone at all outside of the station and his family and friends. I don't think it changes the vibe of Karl so much, but it changes the way Ricky and Steve react to Karl. I would say, but Is My Captain Playing makes that point. James Jagger says later episodes of Series 1 for me. Karl starts to open up and everything he says is a genuine surprise to Ricky and Steve. Plus it's when we first heard about the horse in the house. Of course, classics like that, Series 1 is great. I actually would say Series 3 is even better, but anyway, that's so just a couple of
I think Series 1 does a lot of like the groundwork that take on a life of their own. Like he talks about the horse in the house, that of course comes back in Series 2, and all these little things, like he mentions the names of Auntie Nora and stuff like that, but they take on a life of their own when you get to Series 2. Like in Series 1, talking about the groundwork, and Ricky says this on air, Karl's really happy with it, feels at home with his opinions. He feels like they're warranted, like they're validated. And I think he might have had like a bit of a confidence of crisis, in those early shows, because I've been in those positions before where you're like, oh, do I really think that? Do I really go with that? Is this my opinion? Is this what I'm going to say? But when it gets to Series 2, he does not care, that he will just say whatever he wants, and he's not afraid of, that being the wrong thing to say or the right thing to say, but he is just speaking his truth, which is a lovely thing to hear on radio.
I tend to agree with that, mate. So we've got Gregor Swanson says, I think in Series 2, lots of Karl's legendary stories are told for the first time, and Ricky and Steve are still in disbelief about some of them. Karl also came up with some of his best features, such as Rockbusters and Songs of Phrase. We got lots of people mentioning that, the features. I think that's key for a lot of people. Don McLeod says, Def Series 2, Karl really comes into his own and they become a real trio. Good point. Series 2 opens up with a cat that did not look happy, and the manhole cover that was never seen again. No contest. That was HRH Dominic Dice. Good point. Again, it's a great opener. Series 2, has a great opener. Matthew Jones, season 2 of Ricky's impression of Del Boy. Worst impression ever of anyone. Like, least accurate impression ever, but most funny. Beachy Rocket says, I agree with the above, but Series 4 has all my... Oh, this is an interesting, because she's Series 4. I agree with the above, but Series 4 has my all-time favourite episode, the very final one, where it just descends into utter shambles. The episode completely sums them up. I feel drained today. That's right. Series 4 is saved by I feel drained today and how are we going to get them up there? Like those two things make that whole series, I think. Without that, it's a good series, but it's I don't think anyone would have voted for it. But Beachy Rocket like that most. And we'll just do 3 more. Dominic Booth says Series 1 is the genesis of Karl, him in his purest form. Series 2 is obviously classic, but they're milking him for humour by them. Simon Collins says whichever series featured the man moth, which is Series 2, isn't it? Series 2, yeah. So and so that's it. So thanks for your feedback there, guys. Not just voting in the poll, but you've given some really good and interesting reasons why you thought what you did. And we're going to try and put sort of a poll like this out every week. Sometimes we put joke polls out, like waste cats, waste money. But sometimes we put real ones out where we want your opinions and things. So that was that. And Miles, I believe, now has an email.
Yeah, thanks for everyone taking part in the poll. Yeah, we had a good few emails, and Daisy, who is a D-Trouty, she coined the phrase D-Trouty,
She
so
did.
forever thankful for that. That is when you've listened to all of the D-Trout spinners, and they're all available online, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever you get your podcast. She says, enjoying the XFM and the community episode this evening, and such a great point about the listenership being a small but dedicated fan base. My poor boyfriend listens to me try to explain tenuous links to the show that make me laugh daily, and now sadly he is further removed by me attempting to explain the appeal of your podcast.
Can I just jump in because that's kind of in response to last week or the week before. You were asking, we were talking, got into discussion about if your partner. That's right, because one of our listeners had found his wife through the shows.
Oh,
and would
yeah.
it have been a good thing if your partner knew about the shows or not? So that's what Daisy's referring to there. But
I'm lucky to have one friend who likes the shows as much as I do. Shout out to Neil. Hello, Neil.
Hi, Neil.
We've both been listening for years and mainly communicate with quotes or references. That's what I love, the fact that you can have a conversation that is just entirely done in quotes.
Yeah.
You don't even need to tell stories.
No.
I think something worse than having few friends to share at the show with is a problem I have, where a few of my friends are big fans of the Ricky Gervais show or An Idiot Abroad, but can't be asked to listen to the XFM shows. It's their mistake, so I've given up recommending it, but I have to listen to their bullshit about how much they love the guys and the show. That's a good point, isn't it? Like, how infuriating it is when I mean, but that just comes from a very passionate place, doesn't it? Like, oh, watch this, or someone, the equivalent of someone talking through a film and saying all of their favourite bits.
Yeah, well, no, it's equivalent of someone saying, say to me, if it was like, check out this Oasis, and it was from one of the later albums where they were all shit and Liam's voice was shit, and he's like, oh, it's brilliant, and I'm like, well, look, no, you've got all this stuff back here to listen to. No, it's all right, I'm just going to keep listening to this this later album where Liam's voice is shit. It's that kind of, it's annoyed in that way. Like, I have this with my dad. Love my dad, great. It's not an issue. Like, we're not.
Yep, just go on to slag him off now.
Not falling out, but he loves Karl Pilkington and Idiot Abroad and all these things that he's on TV. I mentioned the podcast to him. He's like, nah, I won't.
It's because
bother.
there's just you just get overwhelmed. There's so much
But
stuff.
people listen to the podcasts. My dad won't even do that, but people listen to the podcasts and think they're amazing. So that's fine, because you might do that. But as long as you're open to the idea of then going back to the XFM shows, some people, once they've discovered something, they kind of don't want to go back.
I think they think they're old, and let me tell you, they've aged pretty well. And they're great. So last week, when we did our listeners special, Gary, you made a point about sort of Ricky's persona, but particularly his Twitter account and the nature of the freedom of speech and the right-wing press.
Yeah.
And Daisy goes on to say, I just wanted to say thank you for articulating how I felt about Ricky for the last few years, but struggled to say. I think you're so right about him and the crossover with the right and the whole freedom of speech. I felt increasingly uncomfortable, especially very recently, with his opinions on the transgender community. I see Ricky then and Ricky now as two separate people in order to listen to the shows with the same love and without twisting or tainting the more extreme or outlandish stories. I think if you listen to them with only knowing Ricky now, they could be seen totally different.
That's an excellent point, Daisy. And I had read your email in the inbox before, but I think that's a very good point. And I could say to you, I could turn it around now and say to you, thank you for expressing something I felt about Ricky but hadn't been able to say in that way. So you've expressed that very well. If you just know Ricky now and you listen to the shows, they could appear quite sinister. The insulting stuff that he's doing, that we know it's Ricky, we kind of buy into Ricky as being completely, it's all for a joke, he doesn't mean any of it, and it's all for comedy, and he's an excellent comedian and he knows what's funny and what's not, and what to take the piss out of and what's not, and he's very edgy, but he doesn't believe all that stuff. If you just know him now and you listen back to the shows, you would start to think, is this guy can be quite like a nasty guy. I'm not talking about how, like we've talked today, like how he is with Karl, but I'm talking when he talks about nationalities and gay people and just the way he's not terrible, anything he says, but it's just, if you knew Ricky now only, they can appear quite sinister. Whereas if Ricky then, it's just for a laugh. And you're right. I think we all do that. Separate Ricky into two different people. That's expressed very well, Daisy. Thank you for. Is there any more, Daisy?
No, that's it for XFM in the community, guys.
Thanks
And if
very
you
much,
want to
Daisy.
get in touch, do so via the usual ways, which is spinnerspodcast@gmail.com, or on Twitter, which is @spinnerspodcast. We're also on YouTube and all the other sort of places where you get your podcasts. So do check it out. Do like and subscribe. Give it a 5-star rating as well if you want, or upwards of 4, I'd say.
I'd say upwards of 1, downwards of 4. So somewhere in between 2 and 3.
Okay, we don't disagree on everything here at the Trout Spinners, but
No, no, we did get 1 2-star rating, and actually it was quite annoying, but I didn't hear the end of it for about 3 weeks. So please rate us 5 stars, because I'll get in the ear from Miles, not criticising me, but just saying, oh, how could this happen, you know?
So that was I like that show. That was fun. Now I think this is the XFM playlist, and this is available in the description. This is basically a collection of our favourite songs, essentially.
Yeah. So now I haven't picked Oasis even half of the time, but I am unashamedly going to pick an Oasis track today, and it's Cast No Shadow. It was when my grandpa died. There was 2 songs I was going to play. One was Whatever, and I did play that. Cast No Shadow was the other one I was going to play. I think I did play it during the show, but I didn't dedicate it to him, like Whatever. So Whatever's not on the album. Cast No Shadow is. It's a great song, very underrated, and Liam's voice is as good as you'll hear it. So on the album track anyway. And that's my song this week.
Do you know what? You've actually caught me. Good choice, by the way. And yeah, I'm gonna have to make it all sentimental now, aren't I? As well. I'm gonna have to say something.
No, you don't, because it was funny when you had a really sentimental reason for picking a song and it meant so much to you and everything. And then I just said Blur Song 2. It's the first song I scrolled
which
past.
Is a great song. Okay, so I'm gonna choose, and I know we joked about it earlier, but I'm a big Block Party fan. I'm not going to put that song in, or either. I know what you're going to say. I'm going to pick a sort of lesser known track from A Weekend in the City, which was one of my favourite albums.
I know that. I think I know that.
Yeah, right. It wasn't a single, but it was called Kreuzberg. And yeah, this album was great because it literally was my life for a short period, which is, go to London, be a bit of a hedonist, and feel really depressed and nostalgic about things, which is what I sort of how I live my life now. So we'll put both of those songs into the playlist, and you can listen to everything else on Spotify.
It is playlist. Yeah. You always say you add it to the playlist. I've always wondered, do you actually? How does it get onto their iPod? How do they download it from our site? I don't understand. Like, you always say you add it to the playlist. I've just always wondered what you mean by that.
I don't even know if I can be bothered to explain this, but I will. If you've got Spotify, do you have Spotify?
No. Well, yeah, I pay for it, but I don't use it. Like everything, Netflix.
Well, that's ridiculous. You should use it. You do the Martin Lewis thing, where you do a monthly clean out of all your standing orders and your bank accounts, and you get rid of anything you're not using. Anyway, if you've got Spotify and you search the Trout Spinners
financial, is that XFM financial advice?
It's good, isn't it? It's true, actually, though. Yeah. So if you search the Trout Spinners playlist, and we're there. And so basically,
the songs are there, so they can download it from our playlist.
All there. I have to manually add them.
But thank you for listening. We're going to play it. Mars going to play out another song, which is from Hugh Faze. Thanks for all your interactions this week. Daisy, your emails was great, and everyone that responded to the poll, thank you very much. We have had other interactions and things on Twitter, but we just don't have time to get to all of them. But thank you so much for any interaction you do with us on any platform whatsoever. And next week are we going to do a D-Trout Spinners next week? Yeah, we've done a Dutch recently, so yeah, we'll do a D-Trout Spinners.
No, I look forward to that. Well, we'll be doing episode 34. I look forward to it. I'm going to echo everything Gary said. Thanks for listening, guys. And to play us out, Hugh Faze. See you next week.